Good morning. It's time for a garden update. Come on. It's the hot time of summer, but it's still time to start fall vegetables because they need enough time to grow before the cold weather hits. Because once it gets cold, they're not going to grow anymore. So we have to start now. These seedlings in these covered trays, they're tall enough to take the covers off, but it's so hot for the next few days, I'm just going to leave them covered. Now, do you remember the nursery bed we started? You can either start seeds in flats or in pots, or you can take a small area of your garden and in the soil itself, start some fall seeds. And when they get big enough, move them and transplant them somewhere else. Now, the benefit is they don't dry out as quickly as in individual pots and flats. You plant them really close together in a small area and it's easier to take care of. So let's see if our hot peppers are growing. These are fall peppers. Yep, the hot peppers are growing. I'm going to wait a little bit longer until this heat wave passes, and then we'll transplant them in different places of the garden. They're going to be for fall peppers, and because they're going to be small peppers, they'll have time to ripen, but big bell peppers wouldn't have enough time. You can also do fall tomatoes too. Now right next to them you saw some baby squash. So here in the mid-Atlantic on the East Coast, vine borers are a huge problem. My soil has it. So what happens is, like if you plant zucchini, just about the time you have this big, beautiful plant with flowers and fruit forming, overnight, the plant just dies. It happens really quickly because a vine borer gets into the base of the plant and it kills it. It's a caterpillar. I'll show you the neighbors, examples of the neighbors. This was happening to me every year and I was so frustrated, so I really looked into it, and since I'm organic, the best solution for me is to wait till after the adult moths that lay the eggs die. Once they're dead at the beginning of July, there's not going to be any more moths laying eggs, and that's when I plant. My fall squash is very successful. Now this neighbor's plant was huge and beautiful, and then one night it was dead in the morning. Now there's a little bit of it left, and maybe that part will survive. Now I need to make sure I get the weeds pulled because I don't want them to choke out the baby squash. My number one enemy are morning glories. They're beautiful, but they have a very strong root system and they spread everywhere. I'm never going to be able to get rid of them. So the last couple of years I've started letting them grow on the fence. I used to religiously pull those out, but I think by letting them grow on the fence, I have less throughout the rest of the garden. I also decided to let them grow on the fence because I noticed that hummingbirds love them. Once in a while, I'd see a hummingbird. So the last 2 years, I've let them go on the fence, but I weave them in and out to control them. So hopefully the hummingbirds will come back. I also have this invasive vine that I don't know the name of that I let grow on the fence, and it makes these purple berries that the birds love. But it's also important because these little tiny insects come and pollinate all those tiny flowers, and we really need to take care of our pollinators. Another project is to clean up this garlic. Hang on, let me find the scissors. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off these roots, and then I'm going to brush off as much dirt as I can. But you need to be careful because I want to make sure I leave the paper intact on the garlic. So this way it'll be ready to store in a cool, dry place. Now the rest of it I'll work on later inside because I need to get out there in the garden while it's still cool. So one way I keep my summer herbs going is I cut off the flower heads because the goal of plants is to develop seeds for survival. And once they develop seeds, they die. So if I keep the flowers cut off of the herbs, they can't develop seeds and they last longer. Now you just saw me cutting off cilantro flowers and they really don't like the heat, so I have a lot of them planted all throughout the garden. And this specific plant is in the shade, so it should last for a while. Most herbs dry really well, but for me, cilantro, the taste really changes, so I'd rather eat it fresh. I'm excited to show you that the turmeric's growing. Now I have two kinds of strawberries here. I have the June-bearing strawberries that I've already finished producing fruit. Now there's a few flowers right now, but they're mainly finished. And then I have ever-bearing strawberries that produce fruit all summer long. They tend to make less strawberries per plant and the strawberries tend to be smaller. But the important thing for all my strawberry plants is to keep the runners cut. So if you leave the runners, yes, those are going to make new plants, but the existing plant is going to be smaller and next year you'll get less strawberries. So you can cut the runners and root them, which I've showed you before, but I have plenty of strawberry plants. It's too hot to take care of transplants, so I'm just going to cut the runners and get rid of them. Now, strawberry plants are good for a few years, so when they're reaching the end of their life, then I go ahead and let the runners go and make new plants. But I don't need any this year. One way I control weeds, the biggest way, is every fall I mulch with cardboard and then fall leaves. In the winter, those leaves slowly break down, and by springtime the cardboard is nice and soft and easy to plant into. I have to plant through the cardboard into the soil. Now at the end of July, stubborn weeds are starting to come through. It's much less than normal, or every place I've made a hole through the cardboard, weeds are going to come through. But it's much better if I only mulched and didn't use cardboard. So fall mulching with cardboard is the secret to my success. Now, you can keep using cardboard throughout the summer, but my big challenge is having enough mulch. If you want to buy mulch, or if you have enough property to save a pile of mulch, then through the summer, yes, you could take boxes and put them around your plant and mulch them. Let me show you. So I really try to save my Amazon boxes and use them in the garden. So I'll go ahead and put bricks on them until I have enough of an area covered, and then put down some leaves. Now plants need support, and my favorite way to do that is with individual stakes. I'm not crazy about cages. They tend to fall over, tends to be hard to find really good strong ones that you can afford. Now I could make them myself, but I prefer individual stakes. It gives me more control. I have a variety of sizes. So right now I need to support the new blackberries. This year we've had a little bit of fruit, but not much. Most of it will be next year. This year's growth is where next year's fruit will be, so don't ever cut off the current year's growth. Look at this really tall sunflower, how beautiful it is. So the grapes are ripening, and apparently they're going to be purple grapes. But we need to protect them from the birds. No, grapes aren't keto, but I want to honor the man that gave it to me by letting it go ahead and grow. So let's protect him with these blossom bags, because the birds will just gobble them up. I need to finish weeding, trimming these vines, and harvesting before this sun hits. Now if you're wanting your morning glories to keep producing blossoms, don't trim the ends of the morning glory vines. That's where the flowers develop. Those are volunteer peanuts that the squirrels and the birds have planted. They're not going to have enough time here to really develop peanuts, but I'm going to leave them, see what happens. Here's another one. The stevia is looking good. So the cabbage is struggling, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it and see what happens. The onions, they're almost ready. I'm going to leave them to dry a little bit more. And the fall vegetables like the baby lettuce and other things around the garden are starting to grow. That's exciting. So any peppers that are struggling, I'm going to go ahead and pick them while they're green. I prefer to wait until they change colors and become sweet peppers. But the problem is when the moisture isn't consistent, sometimes you can get blossom end rot. And if you'll notice, that one plant had those tiny peppers that was really struggling, and I really don't know the reason. All the plants around it are very healthy. That's the reason I plant things in various locations of the garden. So if something fails, then I have plenty more other places. Now, eggplant, I like to harvest it small. I like it a variety of sizes. This is a small variety. This size is perfect. I like them small like this, but hang on a minute. This one, you don't want it any bigger than this. See how it's starting to split at both ends? This is the biggest I'm going to want it. It got buried under leaves and I overlooked it, but it'll still be good. Let's go into the okra jungle. Okra's best picked small, like this one. But when they get big, I've learned if I pick them and get them in the freezer right away, then they stay tender. Now these small patio tomatoes have been perfect this year. Now they're not heirloom, but I didn't need many tomatoes this year. I have so many already canned and dehydrated that this is plenty for me. Well, the sun has reached the garden, so it's time to stop and rest. See you later. Bye-bye. Love you guys.